We're back for week 2 of the Square-based online tournament, and this week I've got a spicy game against channel member Matthew Sinclair, who has got a list that you might recognise if you watch the Fix My List stream, because this is basically, or maybe with some tweaks, the list that I built with him on stream. I think, to be fair, he's actually changed it a little bit since then, but it is one that you might recognise if you watch the Friday live streams. So it's a pretty solid list. It's a fairly standard list, I would say. And the mission that we're playing is Mountain Pass. So a lot harder for me to evade because it's a pretty fast list. Speaking of, let's get into the lists. You might recognize my list now. Obviously, same list as last week. This is a tournament list. The level 4 with the Oaken Stave and the Ruby Ring of Ruin. That gives me a 3d6 dispel if I'm within 3 inches of a wood, and also increases my dispel range by 3 inches, which is absolutely massive. Ruby Ring for that bound level 2 fireball, just nice to have. There's the level 2 Spell Singer with a Power Scroll and Lore Familiar. That means that I can pick Pillar of Fire, I can pick Tree Singing. If I don't roll Arcane Urgency on my level 4, I can pick it up here, because I think Arcane Urgency is probably the most important spell for this list. Really gives you that ability to get out of dodge, which may come up later on down the line. There's also the double stags. I think I mentioned this last time. I think 2 stags might be too much. I probably should have just gone with 1, dropped 1 unit of the 5 Glade Riders that they attached to with the Vanguard banner, drop the captain as well, or maybe even drop the Lord, drop one of the 2, whichever you go for. Free up a lot more points, put some more shooting in. I think that's a better version of the list, but this is what we've got, this is what we're playing with, and I'm having a lot more fun with the annoying 360 charge long-range combat potential that the double stag brings. Speaking of combat potential, I have got the 5 Glade Riders with the Vanguard banner. They've got Hagbane tips as well. I've got the 8 Glade Riders that the 2 spellcasters join. They've got reserve move, but they don't have a move through cover, which is frustrating because in this event, all woods are dangerous terrain for cavalry, which makes sense. I'm okay with that, but it does mean that if I want to move, move through my wood, move back, I've got to take some dangerous terrain tests, which is probably a good balancing mechanic for how powerful that is. I've also got 2 units of Deepwood Scouts in core. They're very strong. I do like putting them in the most frustrating place for my opponent. A unit of 6 Glade Guard, because you have to take them. And then 3 units of Sisters of the Thorn, which are going to be taking Pillar of Fire most games. Sometimes you might want to take Plague of Rust, but honestly, probably not in this list because I haven't got enough poison shooting to make it worthwhile. This list is mostly maximize what you have, use the Pillars of Flame, go from there. Matthew's list is full violence. There is a Chaos Lord who is tooled up to be tanky. This is something that Matthew and I have... this is the second time we've played, actually. I think the first time round he played, he had the Ogre Blade, if I remember correctly, and I recommended the tanky version. Honestly, my intention is that he never gets into contact with me, and if he does get into contact, he wins no matter what he's equipped with. So it doesn't really matter if he's got the Ogre Blade in this matchup. Having the regen is quite nice. Obviously, Brazen Collar for the Magic Resist 2, Talisman of the Carrion Crow for the regen, Mark and Urgle, reroll 6s to hit in combat, Favour of the Gods to reroll that pesky 1 that would give him stupidity on the Favour of the Gods table, and Great Weapon Shield, Chaos Dragon. Just the good stuff there. There is a level 4 Battle Magic Sorcerer Lord with the Marker Zinch, Chaos Steed, Sorcerer, Spell Familiar, Infernal Puppet, Ruby Ring of Ruin. This is the full Gatling. It's going to be sat in a bunker of 10 Marauder Horsemen, getting that +1 to cast, so casting at +5, knowing 5 spells, so you're almost certainly going to get the ones that you need. Then there's a couple of units of 10 Forsaken Slanesh to give them Swift Stride. There are 3 Dragon Ogres with Great Weapon and Heavy Armor, and then there's double Gigantic Spawn. Honestly, the spawn in this matchup, I'm not super worried about. Random movers are really frustrating for a Wood Elf player because you can't stand and shoot, you can't fire and flee, can't react in any way to a random mover, which means that you have to play further away. But I want to play further away anyway. And they have the best saves. They've got a 5-up, 5-up, 5-up armor save, 5-up regen, which is fine, but not anywhere near tank enough to really survive through focused poison shooting. But again, my list doesn't have quite as much shooting as I might like to have, so could go either way, and maybe it does. I think now that we've seen more poison shooting in the meta, obviously Wood Elves were here before, but we're starting to see the big, like the Royal Host Brick, for example. I might just prefer to see 3 units of Dragon Ogres, which is a little bit boring, and they've got big bases, and they don't have the strength of the random movers, but Dragon Ogres are just really good. It's hard to argue with them, but maybe something I should play around with. So, as I said, Mountain Pass. It does mean that I can be a little bit further back. So I measure out, make sure that I'm not going to be in range of the Sorcerer Puppet on turn 1, or the level 4 Dispel on turn 1. I really want to get my Pillar of Flame up and about. Interestingly, Infernal Puppet, which is it's an aura, 24 inches. If you're not in combat with the model that's holding it, enemy wizards cast on 3d6 drop the highest, so you're more likely to miscast, you're much less likely to cast your spells. What this means is you don't want to be in range, obviously, when you're casting. You're very likely to blow yourself up, but it doesn't affect bound spells. So Sisters of the Thorn are not affected by it. But if you're in range of it, you're also in range of a level 4 Dispel threat when you're only casting at +2. So you really want to avoid that model at all costs. I have put my wood up next to a hill just to give me a nice little area to play around. Obviously, the hill blocks line of sight, the woods block line of sight. You can see them down here in the sort of like middle right, the side that I'm deployed on. Behind there, I've got my big unit of Glade Riders with the double Sorcerer. They're not labelled on here for some reason, but they are the 2 top left models in that wood. So they are plenty far away from where the Sorcerer is, but I know that I can theoretically move forwards to get in range if I need to. Next to them, just above, I've got the Glade Riders in Vanguard. That is the 5 with the Vanguard banner. I've got the Glade Captain as well attached. I've got the Glade Lord actually deployed much more riskily on the right-hand side, and I did get to put down my characters after Matthew put down everything else, I believe. So I knew I was going to be fairly safe. The only sort of risk would be the Sorcerer. I measured out where the Sorcerer could get to and cast from, knew that I was safe there given the angles, so put the Glade Lord down and felt pretty safe going to town. Sister of the Thorn, I've been really enjoying putting them in Marching Column because you can cast spells in Marching Column, and once you've cast the Pillar of Flame, you don't need to recast it, so you can just march 24 inches, which is, aggressively okay. Maybe I need to play around with not having them in Marching Column as much, but in this game I've got 1 in Marching Column on a hill behind the building, so safe from the shooting, and then the other 2 units pretty far back. I really don't want to get run down. Getting turn 1 in this matchup I think would be pretty important. I'm not going to be able to scratch the Chaos Lord, but if I can do some real damage to the Chaos Spawn, that's the big thing. I'd like to kill both of the giant spawn before they get to my lines, because, as I said, they're the things that are really difficult for me to react to. Even if I'm outside of a charge arc of a Chaos Spawn, it can still charge me. It just has to end in the charge arc of the unit that it's going towards. So if it was behind a ranked up unit, it would still have to end in the back of the ranked up unit. I hope that makes sense. Maybe a little confusing. As always, I've remembered to take a couple of screenshots here that I will overlay just to give you a bit more better shot of what's going on. And at the back you can see I've got the Deepwood Scouts. So one's behind a hill and one is just deployed behind a wood. They are in range so that they can walk onto the wood and then shoot. What I've done here is I've given Matthew a difficult choice. He can either turn his entire army around and, deal with the Deepwood Scouts. It wouldn't have to be the entire army, but an annoying amount because he's only got big units. So he'd have to turn the Sorcerer around, for example, because realistically, despite them looking like they're in units, they are actually in skirmish. They can move really quickly. They can hide from a big ranked unit. They can escape pretty well. So it would have to be the Sorcerer coming after them, and the Sorcerer is not really pleased going backwards when it wants to be going forwards and shutting down the magic. So it means that, in theory, I'm going to be able to move them into the wood, move them onto the hill, and just pepper Matthew for the rest of the game. Or, as I say, if he turns around, deals with the back, everything else in front gets to shoot, and I can pull his attention in a couple of different ways. So, the roll-off happens, and who gets first turn? Matthew gets first turn. This is expected. He got the +1, but, it would have been nice to get it. It really would have been nice. So, as you can see, the unit of the Glade Captain and the Vanguard Glade Riders, they've moved backwards. I knew that I wasn't going to play aggressive with them. They're just sort of there to be a bully threat, make him think twice. Maybe I can charge something relevant. But they are set down. The dragon goes forwards the full 20 inches. Or is it? Yeah, 20 inches. The 2 gigantic spawn move forwards as well. Everything moves forwards. Matthew gets Oaken Shield off. I elect not to try and fated it because I don't really have much intention of killing that unit. I did and ah about it for a couple of minutes. Well, not a couple of minutes, I don't know, 10 seconds. Because I thought, well, if I move the Deepwood Scouts into the wood, onto the hill, I can shoot into the unit here in the centre and maybe thin it out, maybe cause a panic. It would really suck if, it panicked towards me, and then I could potentially pick it up. But I decided that that wasn't realistic. I wanted to pick up the gigantic spawn because of the threat that they present to me. So yeah, Matthew's turn 1, basically full send forwards, and not really much else happens. Into my turn, I do manage to cast some Pillars of Flame. This is the most successful turn 1 I've had with this list. In terms of Pillars of Flame. Normally I manage to get 1 or 2 off on turn 1, which is not great when you've got a potential 5 that you can be casting. But in this game, I do manage to cast 3 of them, which is nice for turn 1. So, movement-wise, the Glade Captain detaches from the Vanguard squad and just runs over to the right. Given the full wall of meat, I know that the Glade Captain cannot tank the dragon. Probably can't tank the Dragon Ogres either. He gets negatives to hit if he's in a challenge. There's no Shartak in the squad because that is how you should run Chaos Ogres, Dragon Ogres. You shouldn't put champions in there. So he really needs to be going elsewhere. He's probably okay going to some Forsaken. It's a little bit risky, but, I'd play around with it. But if I can get behind a unit or a flank charge or something like that, that's probably the strength that I want to monopolize. Here, everything else just sort of moves back, make sure it's out of charge range of the dragon. The Assist of the Thorn move over to the left and cast. The other unit Assist of the Thorn move from behind the wood over to the hill. The Glade Riders with the 2 level, the level 4, level 2 caster, they move through my wood, then have to move backwards as well with the reserve move, which happens after I take the screenshot. And I drop 3 Pillars of Flame and I drop the wood. I put all my shooting into the gigantic spawn, and I managed to pick off, I believe I do 5 wounds to the gigantic spawn at the front, which is pretty good. And I've also got all the Pillars of Flame in front of it. Obviously, Pillars of Flame don't do damage to a unit if you move through it, but I'm positioned so I can potentially tag it with the roll. And it's dangerous terrain if it has to move through. Loads of good stuff there. So it buys me a lot of time with those gigantic spawn. Not too much to note here other than the 2 units of Deepwood Scouts. One moves up onto the hill, one moves into the wood, as I said I was going to, and they are part of the firepower that I put into the gigantic spawn here, the front one. Coming into Matthew's turn number 2, you can see the Pillars of Fire do some work, and oh no, I don't think I did actually that many wounds, did I? No, sorry. I do move it forwards, and I hit the gigantic spawn and drop it to only 2 wounds remaining. There we go, that was it. So the Pillars of Fire do some real work. However, the rest of the army does full send towards me. After I take my pillar turn, which with the Wood Elf list does maybe take a little longer than you're comfortable with, you can see here that the Dragon Ogres full send forwards, tapping into the woods so they can see potentially where any units might try and hide from them. The Chaos Dragon marches forwards and tags into the wood as well. Because it's quite a thin wood, all he's done is put the edge of his base on there. This means that it's hard for me to use it to hide. In fact, I'm not going to be able to use it to hide from a charge next turn. And other than that, everything just goes forwards. Forsaken go forwards, the gigantic spawn go forwards. Doesn't quite make it into the Glade Lord, which is something I'm happy about because that's probably not a fight I win. Despite him only hitting me on 6s, the stomp attacks are not good for me. And the Tzeentch Sorcerer sets up to try and get into range to cast some spells on me. However, I have measured out the Glade Lord's position. You see him down here at the bottom, sort of bottom middle. He is covered so that if my opponent wants to cast Blue Fire Tzeentch, the only way he could do it from where he was by moving forwards and getting into 27-inch dispel range. So I'm pretty comfortable that I'm going to dispel all of the spells that Matthew casts. I then don't dispel all the spells. He does manage to get a fireball off. Fortunately, I have got a 2-up save against shooting, so it didn't end up doing anything. But there was a moment where I was a little heart in mouth. I was like, oh, I've got to take some saves here. All I have to do is fail 3 of these, and this actually goes really badly for me. But we're all good there. So another full send turn for Matthew. Again, he manages to cast Oaken Shield. I elect not to go for the dispel, because at that time, out of the dispel range. Into my turn 2, and this is where it starts to get a little bit spicy. Normally, as the Wood Elf player, I want to play around the edge of the board, make it hard for my opponent to catch me, make them split their focus. In this game, I'm in a very narrow spot, so really the only option is to punch through, and that's what I do. Pillars hit the gigantic spawn, and I also move forwards and put some shots into it with the Glade Riders here in the front. This unit, because it doesn't have move through cover, ends up losing, I think it's 4 of the Glade Riders, which is a fairly disgusting amount to lose. So 4 Glade Riders are dead. I'm down to half the unit, which is a little concerning. But as you can see, I have moved everything else out of the charge arc of the dragon. Basically, what I've done is gone, okay, this unit of Glade Riders up in the right middle, behind the wood, outside the charge arc otherwise. Great stuff. This unit of Glade Riders with the spellcasters attached, move forwards, out of charge arc, very good. On the top side, the Glade Riders and the Glade Captain both move out of the Dragon Ogre's charge arc, and the Glade Guard as well. They just shuffle backwards, so they're out of charge range of the Dragon Ogres. Again, I put some shots into them, but when you're -3 to be hit, I think, because I think I might get to long range, combined with the -1 for moving, and then the -1 for being in a wood, and it's a T4 target, and it's, a 3-up save on those Dragon Ogres, you're not going to do much. Obviously, you've still got your poison, but 6 shots, I think I caused 1 wound, and the save was passed. Everything else, though, I try and focus into the Tzeentch caster brick. So the Glade Lord, down the bottom left, charges into the Forsaken. This is risky, because Matthew could roll Killing Blow, and if he rolls Killing Blow and then just rolls some 6s into 6s, this goes poorly for me, and I lose a very expensive character if I can't pass a 5-up ward. But, you got to take some risks when you're looking to punt through your opponent. The Sisters of the Thorn that are on the bottom right, the ones that were tagging the hill, they move around to bait out the giant spawn. So this is something that I was asked about post-game. Someone who was watching the game asked me, why did you put them so close? You didn't have to get the Sisters charged. And the reason they're there is I wanted them to be charged because they are pretty good at tying up a spawn. They're probably not going to do all that many wounds to it. Obviously, they've got poison attacks, which is great, but they've got a 4-up ward, and they've got a better weapon skill than the spawn, so the attacks are hitting on 4s, the stomps, hopefully you don't roll too many stomps, and then I've got a 4-up ward save. So lots of dice rolls to get past if you want to actually thin through those Sisters of the Thorn. Everything else, though, pillars are good. I cast a wood with the tree singing level 4. I then forget to reserve move forwards towards it. This is a big blunder. This could have cost me the game because it means that I'm not within 3 inches of a wood. I lose the +3 to dispel, which is really bad. I put loads of firepower into the Marauders, as previously mentioned. I think I kill 5 models, something along those lines. Really thin them out, cause them to panic, but it's a fallback in good order, not the end of the world. And yeah, at this point, I'm feeling like I'm in control of the game. I'm past the scary charge arcs. Matthew's not going to do anything to me this turn. He's just going to have to reposition to try and catch me. But I'm an elf, so in theory, that's going to go well for me. Matthew's turn 3. Pillar of Fire does its job again. One of them does a single wound to the Tzeentch Marauder Horseman. Great stuff. One of them goes through the Forsaken. I think kills a couple of them there as well. And then everything else just sort of shuffles around in the midboard. Matthew's Dragon does position again, this time to try and stop me from running away. What he's trying to do is thread a gap between the Dragon Ogres and the Dragon down here. I think in retrospect, what might have been better is instead of moving this far forwards, if he just sort of moved forwards and angled a little bit so that I couldn't move sideways and get out of charge arc. I think there was maybe a better way to cast a net here to catch some models, but that's the benefit of hindsight. It's the sort of thing that you see when you're looking back at the report, as opposed to maybe when you're playing a slightly more high tension game. The gigantic spawn does make the charge that I have successfully baited in with my Sisters of the Thorn, who stand and shoot and do a wound to it. I was very pleased about that. The Glade Lord continues on in the combat with the Forsaken. They drop down to only 2 models and then break and flee. fantastic. They need a double one to rally, so I can theoretically just leave them and not worry about it. So the Glade Lord can go and mop up something else, because he's a fantastic tool just for getting around and killing way more than his points worth. That's about it, though. So the Tzeentch caster does unload into the Glade Guard squad. Ruby Ring of Ruin, I think, or maybe it's the Fireball, the level 4 Fireball, manages to finish off the 4 Glade Guard, and I believe there are 2 wounds passed off onto the level 4. So I've got a single wound on the level 4, but I've still got both wounds on my level 2. So I'm feeling a little at risk on my casters, but very happy that I didn't lose them. Again, this was a misplay on my part. If I'd reserved move forwards, I'd have got within 3 of the wood. Then, in theory, I probably dispel all of the spells he casts. It's not guaranteed, but it's a lot more likely. So, definitely a blunder there. Into my turn, and I'm just going to keep doing the thing that Wood Elves do so well. I passed the test to march the... first of all, onto my level... onto my turn 3, Pillars of Fire are really wreaking havoc in the mid-board. Kill a couple of models in the Marauder Horseman, they kill another model in the Forsaken unit. It's not the damage that they're putting out, it's the position that they're in, so they're still going to threaten to cause more damage, which is great. Charges, I try and charge the Glade Lord on Stag into the unit of Marauder Horsemen who do flee. They flee, Glade Lord doesn't catch them, but gets some mobility. The Glade Riders, they march out of, harm's way. They do pass the march test, then I Arcane Urgency them so they can move a second time, which means I can get them nice and safely behind the woods. The 2 casters join them. Fantastic stuff. Look what we've got here. We've got a nice safety net, which is exactly what I was looking for. The backup unit of Glade Riders was actually surprisingly handy in this game, something that maybe I'll play around with longer in future. After that, all of my shooting tries to go into the Sorcerer Lord, and I finish off the rest of his bodyguard. He had a couple of Tzeentch Marauder Horsemen left. They eventually die. Then I managed to do a single wound to him with the rest of my shooting, and keep in mind I've got, I think I've got a Fireball, a Ruby Ring, all of the poison shooting, all of this stuff is great. But doesn't quite finish him off. Leaves him on 2 wounds, which is a lot of wounds when you've got a 4-up save for me to deal with. Coming into Matthew's turn, this is where it sort of gets a little bit pivotal. I hit him with the Pillars of Flame. I'm like, great. I think I've got 2 Pillars of Flame that can hit your Sorcerer. And they don't kill him. In fact, they don't do any wounds. This is a little bit of a problem for me, because now the Sorcerer gets out of there. He does have to rally, which is something, so he doesn't get to dispel all of the Pillars of Fire. That would have been pretty game losing. But he does get out of there, does march to try and position so he's not getting hit by too many Pillars of Fire, positions him so that the dragon, when the dragon comes back round, if I go for the Sorcerer Lord, I probably have to deal with the dragon. He does finally get a charge off as well, which is nice. Well, other than the giant spawn. And the Dragon Ogres hit the 6 Glade Guard and just absolutely pace them. Other than that, Forsaken just really enjoying their time with that Pillar of Fire. Having just the best time being melted by far too many pillars. On the bottom left of the map, you may have noticed some Forsaken that have moved. I have not interacted with them at all. In fact, a little detail that I didn't mention last turn is on my turn 3, I declared a charge into them. So they had to flee, because that's, they're fleeing already. You charge something that's fleeing, it has to flee again. I then redirected into the Marauder Horseman, which then fled, but that's fine because I moved in that direction. I'm like, cool, they're going to run off the board in either Matthew's turn 5 or turn 6. He rolled a double 1 to rally, which was cool, but also incredibly annoying for me, because now it's threatening my unit of Deepwood Scouts. So that's something that I'm going to have to deal with. Combat with the Giant Spawn is not going so well. The last 2 turns, it's gone pretty well. I've done enough on combat res from poison shooting, from the stand and shoot, or just poison attacks. They have poison on the profile, so technically that means that you get poison steed attacks as well, which feels weird, but, you can rationalize that. They put poison berries on the antlers, something like that. But this time I do lose enough models that I lose combat, and that's fine because I don't die. I just fall back in good order. I get caught. Ideally, what I want is to survive through to Matthew's turn 5. That is greedy. I am asking for a lot. But if he dies, if the Sister of the Thorn dies on Matthew's turn, it's a lot harder for him to reposition his unit and catch me, which is what I'm going for. My turn 4. Pillars of Fire and some real incidental shooting see off the last of the Forsaken. One Pillar of Fire manages to catch the Sorcerer Lord, which is not enough, unfortunately. I do a single wound to him, but again, it's not enough. So I position, try and put all the shooting I can into them. On the bottom left of the map, the Deepwood Scouts move away from the Forsaken, so they can theoretically stand and shoot if they need to. Also, the Forsaken are in the woods. It would be -1 to their movement. It would be, lowest of the 2d6 on the charge, so theoretically maybe somehow it goes wrong and Matthew doesn't make the charge, but I do put shots in there and do finish that unit off. Every other shot I have goes into the Sorcerer Lord, and Matthew is rolling saves like an absolute hero, which is great. It's, very, very flavorful and incredibly annoying that the Sorcerer doesn't die. At this point, there's not much left on the board that I can soak up points-wise, so I'm hoping to pick up the Giant Spawn next turn and the Sorcerer Lord at the start of Matthew's turn, but there's not really all that much. Something you may have noticed as well that I don't think I mentioned last turn is the Dragon Ogres. You can see they are facing the wrong way. Why is that? Because they didn't paste the Glade Guard. I've just remembered what happened was the Dragon Ogres declared a charge into them. I voluntarily fled. The reason I fled was I wasn't going to get caught. If I don't get caught, Matthew doesn't get to test to restrain, face a different way. So if you're ever by a board edge, you're getting charged by a dragon, make sure you flee. You don't want to die in combat because that gives them a free reform. You just want to get out of there, get off the board, and they can't do a read to face. So you buy up an extra turn of time to not have to deal with the dragon, or in this case, the Dragon Ogres. Not a lot to say though. Basically, I'm just putting as much damage out as I can. I'm not rolling too many spells because I'm really worried about miscasting on my 1 wound level 4. So I think all I cast are bound spells, basically. I put the Fireball from the Ruby Ring of Ruin into him, doesn't manage to finish him off. I put the... I don't think I need to cast any Pillars of Flame. I think all 4 that I've got in this game are out. My level 4 didn't roll at this game. So yeah, I think I'm basically just gambling on getting the Sorcerer with the Pillars of Flame at this point. And it goes a little bit wrong for me. Coming into Matthew's turn 5, where did all those Pillars of Fire go? Well, because I moved all my stuff and then took my shooting phase, where I was pretty confident I was going to finish off the Sorcerer, because he only had 2 wounds. I think he only had 1 wound by the time I went to the shooting phase. This meant that the Sorcerer Lord survived. He was hit by 1 pillar. That pillar didn't kill him, and he was then in position to dispel all of my Pillars of Fire and my tree. And the tree is the problem. So if we just quickly ping back, look at where the tree is. That is blocking line of sight for the dragon. Yes, theoretically, Matthew could fate it on an 8 on the dice, which is not super unlikely. But I thought maybe I'd be okay. And, it's an 8, that's like a 40% chance, something like that. Maybe a little bit less. So I wasn't banking on him being able to get it. But also, if he does manage to dispel it, I just have to flee from the dragon anyway, which is fine because I've got the points to hence Sorcerer, and there's nothing else really that I want to kill in that part of the board, so I don't mind running away. However, as I said, Sorcerer doesn't die to Pillar of Fire. Sorcerer dispels every remains in play spell on the board, which is honestly a little bit horrifying. And yeah, that opens up the charge for the dragon. This is a pretty sweaty moment for me because I've got to decide what I'm doing. I look at it, I consider maybe just challenging out the dragon. I decide not to because then I'm just going to flee anyway, so I may as well flee when I've got a little bit of a head start. That was the thinking, and I roll a nice solid 13 or 14 inches between my 2d6 plus the Swift Stride, so I do get out there. The dragon follows up. There wasn't anything else in range to redirect into, I believe, so literally just follows up in the direction, but all of my casters are currently fleeing, so there is potential for that to go wrong. I was kind of banking on that unit surviving, because what I really wanted to do is just put as much shooting into that Sorcerer Lord without being charged by the Dragon Ogres next turn. And that unit there would have been able to march past, wheel round, something along those lines, put some shots in. But, yeah, no, they do die, so it causes me some issues. And, yeah, points start to get a little close. I've been tallying it up as we go. And I think given how points dense the characters are, I'm actually a little bit of risk here. There could be a draw. I don't think I'm realistically going to lose, but there is a draw in my future. And this is the square-based online tournament. If you want to get to the top cut, you got to win all 3 of your games. But a little bit of spoilers. That might not even be enough. We'll see. We'll see. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned at this point. This is where the game starts to get really, really clench for me. Turn 5, turn 6. This is where I start to really panic. So we go into my turn number 5. And let's just start as we mean to go on. You can see that the Sorcerer Lord is still alive. This is a problem. This is a problem. Again, I try and do some shooting. I maneuver. I try and get out of range. I'm not sure why everything is labelled as red now. They're still my models, I swear. The level 4 just runs away. It detaches from the squad, runs away. Because I can't risk casting my spells into the Sorcerer Lord because of the risk of the miscast, what I do is just run it away, decide that I'm just going to kill it with poison shots. Everything else marches up. The unit of Sister the Thorn walk up, pivot, try and cast the pillar. It gets dispelled. The Glade Riders walk up, put some shots in, don't get it. The Deepwood Scouts aren't able to get in range. They put shots into the gigantic spawn. I think I do 1 wound, or maybe do no wounds at all. Don't do very much. The reality of it is that I'm going to have to try and charge with the Glade Lord next turn. So I march the Glade Lord over. The Glade Captain, I can't get into range without being in the charge arc of the Dragon Ogres, and I don't really want to risk that. So what I do is I decide to just walk forwards, take a single shot with my bow. I think he's got magical attacks on his bow or something. Doesn't matter. Obviously, I haven't paid for Hackbane tips. And yeah, the Sorcerer Lord survives yet another turn with a wound remaining. Although, to be fair, I am not able to put too much into it. This looks like quite a fast turn, but I think there's probably a good 15-20 minutes of planning that went into this because, yeah, I really need the Sorcerer Lord to die, and Matthew really doesn't want it to die because that would change the game from a loss to a draw. Coming into Matthew's turn number 6, we're almost there. And the dragon pivots and uses its Dragon's Breath, which is very exciting. I'm always a fan of seeing that happen. The Sorcerer Lord also moves behind the Dragon Ogres to provide a shield, so I can't charge with the Glade Lord, which sucks for me. And between them, a lot of models die. We drop down to 3 models in the Sister of the Thorn squad. The level 2 caster is still alive on a single wound, and the dragon has managed to breathe on the squad. And yeah, between all of those magic missiles and the Dragon's Breath, all of the Glade Riders die. So bleeding points here, and I really need to pick something up. In retrospect, maybe it would have been better just to run everything away here, but it's difficult. I hadn't seen the line where Matthew puts his Dragon Breath down the flank. Honestly, I just missed it. So that extra damage definitely helped him pick up the squad, I think, from memory. So it comes into my last turn, and again, I've done the maths. I know that I have to kill the Sorcerer now. There is no ifs, ands, or buts, and I can't charge it. So what do? I decide that I charge the Dragon Ogres with the Glade Lord because I want to potentially get in. Theoretically, I can run them down if they're fleeing. That gets me the victory, and I just move everyone else to shoot. So I leave a little gap so the Glade Captain can take a shot. I move the 3 Sister of the Thorn forwards, and everyone else just gets out of the way. There's not really anyone left in range to do damage to the gigantic spawn. The Deepwood Scouts move forwards, and the level 4 caster is here, stood just casting fireballs. And I'm like, right, I've got plans. I just need to pick up one of the 2. And after all the rolls happen, I do 1 wound to the gigantic spawn. I do kill the Sorcerer Lord, and then we go into a combat with the Dragon Ogres. In retrospect, I'm not really sure why I thought this was the right plan, because I almost die. I take 2 wounds, which is, or is it 3 wounds? Yeah, I'm left on a single wound on the Stag Captain, which is terrifying. And this is through, my 3-up save in combat, my 5-up ward, my -1 to be hit, reducing their weapon skills. So they're only hitting me on 6s. They do get 2 hits through. They do get 2 wounds through. I fail my saves. A stomp goes through. I take some wounds there. It's a pretty sketchy situation. And I do narrowly scrape a victory. So that puts me 2-0 at this point in the square-based online tournament. So going well. And that's that. Round 2 over. I'm 2-0. I'm not going to make a battle report out of round 3. I'd like a little bit of variety. I think 3 Wood Elf games might be a little bit much. The 2 very different games. They played out very differently, so I think it's worth putting them both in. But I have played game 3 already. Spoilers, I did win that one. But the way that it works is, I believe, going into the top cut, I might not make it because there are potentially going to be 3 players who are 3-0. I think it's the top 2 from each pod. And unfortunately, I got a 14-6, a 12-8, and a 12-8, so I haven't scored super highly. This isn't, I'm not mad about it. Going in, I knew this was how the tournament was scored. I decided to play Wood Elves because I felt like it was a consistent army. I didn't really consider the fact that maybe I wouldn't make the top cut if I won all my games, but it is what it is. So we'll have to see how that one shapes up next week. Obviously, there will be a stats show coming Monday or maybe Tuesday, depending on how long it takes to record. There'll be some interesting details coming at the end of round 3. Obviously, we've got loads of data at that point, and we can talk about the 16 lists that are going into the top cut. That'll be exciting, even if I'm not in it. And next week, I think we'll be looking at a pick my list. So if you are a channel member, if you're a Grail Knight tier supporter, over the next day or so, I will be asking you to put your thoughts into the Pick My List channel as to what you'd like me to see. And I will be opening it up to Longbeard voting as well. So come Friday or Saturday, I will ping you if you're on the Discord and you are a Longbeard or Grail Knight, and get you to vote on what you'd like me to play over the weekend. See you next time. Thank you for watching, and thank you to the support that I receive from my channel members. Huge thanks to the Grail Knight tier supporters, and also thanks to the Longbeards and the Fnatic tier supporters as well. If you want to support the channel, you too can become a member. The link is down below the video. But if you don't want to give me any money, which is entirely fair enough, I would appreciate the thumbs up, the comments, all of those good things that help me get found in the YouTube algorithm. They really help, and they've been helping grow the channel, and I appreciate the support that I've been given. If you want to see more stuff and just engage in the community we've been building, there is a closer order Discord down below. It's not a VIP Discord, anyone can join, but there are some VIP sections for the YouTube members at Longbeard tier and above. Currently, I'm trying to get 2 videos out a week on a Thursday and a Sunday, and also doing 2 live streams. That's a Tuesday and a Friday. I do stick to this as much as possible. So, check me out. I'll see you around.